Alright boys, welcome back to BBL. Today we are going to be going over the week 1 team builder, and if you're new here you might be wondering why I'm uploading a day early. But before that, did you know less than half of the people that watch my videos are subscribed, and you are one of them? It'd be awesome if you could go down below and hit that subscribe button to change that and help me get to my goal of 3,000 by the end of the year. I like to upload 2 videos for whatever league I'm in. The match itself for BBL this season is going to go up on Sunday, but I upload team builders as well that will go up the day prior. These team builder videos are separate, so people that want to watch them can, but they will not be forced to during the match. Basically, what this is I'm going to be talking about my team, why I'm bringing what I'm bringing, and my opponent's team and what does well into me. In week 1, we have a treat. We're facing one of my best friends in the world, someone who is genuinely like a brother to me. We're playing Obo. If you don't know Obo, he's obviously a channel friend. I've been friends with Obo for the better part of a decade. He's lived with me. I've known him through a majority of my life at this point. And I'm very excited to be playing him week 1. There's nobody I would rather be playing week 1, to be completely honest. Not only should this be a good matchup because he's a friend, but we should be able to sneak in our first win here. Let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into it. Sonny, go ahead and throw those Pokemon on screen. Obo's team is going to consist of Groudon, Freetower, Raging Bolt, Screamtail, Rillaboom, Sneasler, Mandibuzz, Milotic, Gudra Hisui, Porygon 2, and Terra Banette. Let's go ahead and forget about the Terra Banette. That Pokemon's not going to matter a whole lot. And I'm going to try something new this time with the team builders, where I talk about the matchup as a whole, and then I specifically talk about what Pokemon I think he has that does well. So key points to look at in this matchup, in my opinion, by far the best Pokemon in this matchup is going to be Kyurem-Black. And I think the set is pretty obvious. The item has some fluctuation, but Dragon Dance, Icicle Spear, and Fusion Bolt has zero resist. There's just no resist on our opponent's side of the field, and that even might force a potential Raging Bolt Terra. On top of that, Ho-Oh is obviously very centralizing, and something like the Sneasler has to choose if it wants a move to hit that Ho-Oh, or if it wants something like momentum or coverage for the Gholdengo. So Ho-Oh plus Kyurem-Black already proving to be awesome. And on top of that, those 2 Pokemon make him want to bring rocks, and his steel type is Gudra Hisui, and his rockers are Groudon and Screamtail. Groudon doesn't love running rocks, and Screamtail, given this matchup, doesn't love running rocks. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but because of that, I actually don't think Obo's going to have rocks, and if he does, it's going to be on Groudon, and he could be like a Scarf variant, so we could potentially know that he's locked into that, or we know that he's not a Swords Dance variant because he needs 3 different moves. Those being Stone Edge, Precipice Blades, and Heat Crash. Other initial thoughts, there are a couple of different modes that do very well on our team in this matchup, the first of which is going to be Misty Terrain G Weezing. Weezing kind of sucks in this matchup in general. It's a Pokemon that doesn't actually check Groudon, even though you would like it to. It can't take 2 Heat Crashes by the skin of its teeth. It takes 49.4 max, but it also cannot break a sub, so Weezing is kind of useless in that sense, but Weezing gives us control of the terrain, and also Misty Terrain with Kyurem-Black is fantastic into this Raging Bolt matchup because we can Icicle Spear past it if he is not already Terra, or we can Fusion Bolt if he does Terra into the Steel or Water types to check our Ice move and push past him, and his Draco would not be doing very much damage in the terrain. The other option here is Screen Setup. Hyper Offense Screen Setup is a very, very good win con here. Obo gets overwhelmed very easily by Kyurem-Black plus Terra Iron Boulder, and in general, I think that we have a fantastic matchup here. I think Obo has 2 Pokemon that do really well, but I think our team overall really overruns Obo's team. So let's dive a little bit deeper. What Pokemon does Obo have that do well? The first of which is obviously going to be Groudon. I talked about it a little bit already, but Scarf makes a ton of sense. I also think Swords Dance 3 attacks makes a ton of sense. If he's Scarf, it's going to be Stealth Rock and the 3 aforementioned attacks, Precipice Blades, Stone Edge, and Heat Crash. If he's going to be the Swords Dance variant, it's just Swords Dance over Stealth Rock. There's definitely a little bit more room for creativity than I'm giving it credit for. He could be something like Solar Beam for the Swampert. He could be something like, I think it gets Bulk Up. He could be Spikes on this set. But I do think those 2 sets that I named are probably the 2 best sets in the matchup. Scarf gives him the ability to outpace things like non-booster Iron Boulder, which I didn't talk about, but doesn't do very well in this matchup in general, already being the fastest Pokemon, and it would just be here to cover things like Scarf, specifically on this Groudon. Past that, Raging Bolt I think is actually the second best Pokemon in the entirety of this matchup, right behind Kyurem-Black. Raging Bolt's dual stabs are very hard for us to deal with, and in my opinion, the 2 types that it really should be looking at here are going to be Fire and Steel. Fire is very, very good because it allows it to resist hits from the Ho-Oh, as well as the only weakness really that's relevant into my team that is adding is going to be the ground weakness, and most of my users are earthquake users, and they don't really enjoy using earthquake in the grassy terrain potential. The only downside to this is going to be Iron Boulder does have some pretty nasty special defense right off the bat, and obviously it's not really going to enjoy a mighty cleave, but Terra Fire also gives it a way to reliably hit both the Toedscruel and the Gholdengo. In my opinion, there's one very obvious set, and it's Calm Mind, Thunderclap, Dragon Pulse / Draco Meteor, and Terra Blast with Terra Fire. That's to check the Ho-Oh if he wants to help with that. He could also throw Sub over one of those moves. He could also just be Terra Steel to help check the Kyurem Black. So really, we're going to see how his mindset is with his team based on his Terra Raging Bolts type. Next up is Screamtail, another Pokemon that I do think is going to come into this matchup, but I don't think he wants rocks. I think he's going to be Photosynthesis Speed with Encore to boost a +1 Kyurem Black, potentially into Dragon Dance. There's like a plethora of moves that this Pokemon obviously always wants. In this matchup, it's Fire Blast, Thunderbolt, Wish, Protect, Dazzling Gleam, Stealth Rocks, Thunder Wave, and Encore. So there's 8 different moves that I think this Pokemon really wants here. You could even tack on Calm Mind onto that list, so narrowing down what type of Screamtail we're going up against early is going to be crucial. But those first 3 Pokemon are, in my opinion, 3 Pokemon that come no matter what type of build Obo brings. The next Pokemon we're going to talk about is going to be Rillaboom, and I think Rillaboom has maybe the worst Rillaboom matchup I've ever seen. I've got Ho-Oh, I've got Kyurem Black, Gholdengo, Terra Boulder, Weezingala. It's not a fun time for Rillaboom over there. But Rillaboom does provide some very important tools that I do think Obo really wants in this matchup, specifically the grassy terrain, potentially paired with the Sneasler, on top of being paired with the Groudon, and potentially Terra Fire Raging Bolt, making Ho-Oh's Earthquakes into it weaker. Obviously, on top of that, giving recovery to 2 Pokemon that otherwise do not have it. So while I think Rillaboom does very poor in this matchup, I definitely do see the reasoning for why Obo could be bringing it here. Sneasler is another Pokemon that I think has a poor matchup, but I do still think has to come here. The 2 sets that I'm primarily worried about are going to be Grassy Seed and Focus Sash. Focus Sash lead actually does do very big work into the specific team that I am bringing, but I think Grassy Seed has a lot more usability and practicality than a Focus Sash lead. There's 4 attacks that he wants. It's going to be Dire Claw in close combat, Throat Chop, and Rock Slide. He's going to have a hard time choosing between those 4, Swords Dance and U-Turn, depending on the set that he is. But those are the 2 sets I think do the best into us. The set I think Obo is going to bring is going to be Scarf. I don't think Scarf does particularly well into us, but knowing how Obo builds and being his friend for so long, I know that he's going to see the Sneasler outspeeds Kyurem Black at +1, and he's going to say, man, I need that. Let's make sure we outspeed and have a way to protect against that Kyurem Black. And I don't think it's very good because I do have a ton of fighting resist on my team that I am in fact bringing, but I see the merit, and I do think that is what he's going to do. The rest of the Pokemon, I'm not very confident in him bringing or not bringing, the first of which is Mandibuzz. It doesn't do great here. He could bring it if he's scared of Azelf or if he is scared of Gholdengo. He could use it to take 2 hits from the Ho-Oh, which it actually does do alright, but it does not beat Ho-Oh because it doesn't do any damage to me. He could bring it as a defogger, but he values his hazards being up on the field more than my hazards not being up on the field, if that makes any sense to you. Next up is Milotic. Milotic's horrible, and it should never come in this matchup. The 2 mons that it would think to check potentially are going to be Ho-Oh and Kyurem Black, and it does not do either of those because it does not get toxic, so it does not actually do damage. The most it could do is haze us, prevent us from potentially setting up, or Dragon Tail us and prevent us from setting up. Past that, Milotic's really bad, and I really do not think it should come. Goodra Hisui is a Pokemon that I've kind of hyper fixated on it coming in this matchup just because of how well a certain set does into the team that I am bringing. Assault Vest, Dragon Tail, Rock Slide, Fire Blast, and Ice Beam does really well. But looking at the matchup, I don't necessarily know if Obo is going to bring that exact set because there's a lot of Pokemon like Swampert or G-Weezing that don't really care about that set that could definitely make an appearance. And then lastly, Porygon 2, because I'm not talking about Banette. Porygon 2 could come. A Trick Room Raging Bolt could be pretty scary into me, but Porygon 2 itself doesn't do a whole lot of damage and gets walled by a ton of different things. He could bring a Foul Play, Trick Room Recover, Tri-Attack set, but Gholdengo walls it forever, so I'd be a little bit surprised, but maybe he wants to put some pressure on the Gholdengo and he throws on Shadow Ball. That way Gholdengo's a little bit weakened for that Sneasler in-game potentially. I don't know. It's possible, but I think Goodra Hisui has a leg up on it in my opinion. And that's going to be the matchup. Let's move on into the team that we are bringing. Starting off, of course, every single week it's going to be like this. with Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is fantastic here. He does not have resist to our dual stabs, so we can pretty much pack that on very easily, and we're also going to throw on recover without even really thinking about it. Our last move is going to be Earthquake, and this was Will-O-Wisp for a little bit in the building process, but Earthquake for specifically Terra Fire, Raging Bolt outside of terrain felt a little bit too valuable to pass up on, especially because Will-O-Wisp wasn't being clicked a whole lot, because we do have Sacred Fire to click and just burn whatever wants to come in on us anyway. And we're actually going to be Life Orb. We're going to be Life Orb because of how good offensive Ho-Oh does. This Pokemon 2-hit KOs everything on Obo's team. No exaggeration. The only Pokemon that it might not is going to be the Fizdef Groudon, but past that, which I do not expect, past that, it should 2-hit KO every single Pokemon on Obo's team, except Marvel Scale Milotic, but I don't think you're going to bring that, and even if you do, Brave Bird, damn near, it does like 44 max, so after the burn, it's pretty close. I debated going Boots for a very long time, but the damage that Life Orb provides is just too much to pass up. We're probably going to get knocked off anyway, so realistically it doesn't matter, so throwing up as much damage as possible is to my liking in this matchup. We're simply max speed to potentially outspeed an offensive non-Scarf Groudon, just the max attack after that, and it's just a pretty offensive Ho-Oh that we could potentially lead, but I do have another lead in the back that I really like. Our next Mon, it's going to be this way every single week, Kyurem Black. This Pokemon is easily the best Pokemon in this matchup. We're going to go with a pretty predictable set here with the loaded dice, Dragon Dance, Icicle Spear, Scale Shot, and Fusion Bolt. You might be looking at this and saying, wow, this is the least creative set I've ever seen in my entire life. I thought you were a good Kyurem Black user. I am, and there was some creativity for a little bit, but shout out to the guy who helped me build this team. I don't know if I shouted him out yet. Wagon Fruit, he helped me a lot through the process of talking out this team and getting to a place that I finally like this team. He convinced me of Scale Shot over Snowscape because I had Snowscape for a little bit, and the idea behind Snowscape was Icicle Spear plus Fusion Bolt hits the majority of his team. There's really no need for anything else, so Snowscape I can click as Raging Bolt comes in, prevent it from getting the special attack boost, and even potentially set up on it again or set up on something with that defense boost. It was super niche and it really never came into effect in the single mock that I did, so I changed it to Scale Shot because Scale Shot gives me a potential in-game where I can just lock into Scale Shot, get that speed boost, and even potentially click it twice to get the speed boost to outspeed a Scarf Sneasler. Realistically, I don't think I'm ever going to click Scale Shot, depending on his Raging Bolt Terra type, of course, but it's nice to have just in case there is something that I see is Scarf, like the Groudon or something, and I can't really set up a DD. We live a Draco from a modest Raging Bolt after Rocks with a light screen up, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then we're enough speed to outspeed the Groudon, and then we went the rest into attack. This is going to be our win con and our primary way that we want to get to this in-game. Next up, I talked about screens. We're bringing Grimmsnarl. Screens plus Kyurem Black is just too good to pass up in this matchup, and I originally didn't even have Grimmsnarl on the team. I had Wheezing Galar, but he just does not break the Groudon sub, which is the whole reason he was brought. So we changed it to Grimmsnarl, which is our other potential lead alongside Ho-Oh. I'm leaning more Grimmsnarl to get a potential screen up on whatever we might face. Light screen is huge for the Raging Bolt, which we don't pivot into great. Reflect is huge for the Groudon that we do not pivot into great. We're Crunch with enough attack to guarantee break a max HP Raging Bolt sub because I'm horrified of it, and the Spirit Break is our other stab to round it out. We're Light Clay because as long as he doesn't defog, as long as he doesn't Brick Break, which he does have a few Brick Break potential Pokemon, we get those screens up, we can set up with our Kyurem Black and potentially have an easy in-game. We have enough speed to outspeed the 24 speed Raging Bolt, which I think is very crucial. I don't think he's going to be very fast on that Raging Bolt to potentially break the sub or get some damage off before we get KO'd or even get the special attack drop with Spirit Break. Our defense investment allows us to live 2 Groudon Precipice Blades after Rocks. Like I said, our attack allows us to break the max HP Raging Bolt sub with Crunch, and then we put the rest in a special defense. I'm leaning towards this being the lead. It's probably going to be the lead, and then if he leads Sneasler, we're probably going to have to get a Reflect up. We'll talk about it in the game, but Sneasler is not the ideal lead into this guy, obviously. Next up, we got Big Shoulder Day. We are going to be Terra Grass, and Obo looked me into the windows to my soul in Soul Red that we were going to be Terra Grass because it has a lot of merit here. I think it's the best Terra type in the matchup for Boulder. We resist Glide, we resist Thunderclap. We can actually hit the Groudon super effectively and resist that Precipice Blades. This is really nice, right? The set I'm not so sold on though. We're Boots because it allows us to potentially live a Scarfed Sneasler close combat and KO it in return with a Psycho Cut. I had AV for a little bit, but it didn't really make too much of a difference in the calcs. It was just kind of like we can hard switch in on the Raging Bolt one time. So I decided to opt more for the Boots. In case he is that Scarfed Sneasler and he does have a close combat in-game, the Boots saves us from getting KO'd from an adamant close combat. Unfortunately, we needed 4 attacking moves here. I had Swords Dance over Psycho Cut for a long time, but we were very Sneasler weak. So I went with Mighty Cleave, which is pretty self-explanatory. Psycho Cut specifically for the Sneasler. Solar Blade to KO the Groudon. Mighty Cleave into Solar Blade KOs the Groudon. And then we are going to have close combat, specifically because my team is super weak to Gujar Hisui, and I could have put SD over this slot, but I really don't think we can beat Gujar Hisui if I don't have close combat in this slot. Our EVs are pretty self-explanatory. We can outspeed a non-Scarf or unburdened Sneasler, max attack, rest into HP. Our next mon is here strictly for that Sneasler. It's going to be Gholdengo, and we're going to be Rocky Helmet. There's a couple of sequences that I don't really like. I talked about Sneasler being the potential lead. If he leads Sneasler, obviously Gholdengo is the freest switch in the world. If he U-turns, we get Rocky Chip, break a potential Sash, which is awesome. But in the same breath, we also let Groudon in for free. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we don't switch into Groudon. So we're going to have to really think about how that sequence is going to play out in the match. But Gholdengo is here for that Sneasler, for the Scream Tail as well, and this Pokemon does very well into checking those two things. The only issue is this Pokemon does horrible into like Groudon and stuff. We don't have too many switch-ins, but it's easy to sack a Pokemon and they get a KO with something like Groudon with this Gholdengo, so we have to be careful how we play it. Recover to stay healthy, plot to be able to break through a potential CM Scream Tail, make it rain for big damage, and Shadow Ball again for big damage. Dual Stabs is pretty unresisted here, I guess is more so what I mean to say. And we could have went Focus Blast in this slot, but Shadow Ball gives us a way to hit the Raging Bolt pretty well as the Gujar Hisui. And Focus Blast, I'm a little bit worried that we've obviously missed, but also the Raging Bolt could potentially be a Terra type to defend that. I don't think it will be, but I think Shadow Ball is just the safer option here. We can outspeed a Raging Bolt creeping a 24 speed Ho-Oh. That's what our random 80 speed is for. We live 2 Adamant +2 Sneasler Throat Chops. That might just be with Reflect Up. Hold on. Our defense allows us to live 2 Sneasler Throat Chops, and then we put the rest in the special attack Modest. And that is going to be our Gholdengo set. And then lastly, we got fan favorite Bloopy making an appearance, so we are just bringing the top 6, but we've got a very creative Toedscruel set here with the Eject Pack and Leaf Storm. Look, I don't have great ways to check Raging Bolt, obviously. Swampert does an okay job, Toedscruel doesn't do great, but Toedscruel has a little bit more merit because it does outspeed the Groudon, which obviously Swampert doesn't, and it outspeeds most of his team, so being able to get big hits off, in my opinion, is more valuable than the rocks that Swampert provides. So we are going to be this Toedscruel, and we're going to be Eject Pack Leaf Storm. The first time we're on Raging Bolt, we're going to Eject Pack Leaf Storm into the potential Mandibuzz, into the potential Raging Bolt Terra Firing. We're going to switch out, we're going to play accordingly around it. We're Toxic to potentially be a Calm Mind Raging Bolt, Rapid Spin to keep hazards off the field for our 2 non-Boots Ubers, and then Dual Stabs does very well. We have enough speed to outspeed Groudon with max special attack, rest into HP, and that is going to be our team, boys. The main idea here is to get Kyurem Black in a position to win in the in-game. We're going to probably lead Grimmsnarl, do big damage with Ho-Oh, do big damage with Iron Boulder, I guess not Toedscruel for sure, and we're going to play accordingly, and we're going to play to the best of our abilities to get this week 1 BBL dub. Trying to shake the rust off, so please bear with me if this wasn't the best team builder in the world. I'm trying to shake the rust off, so please bear with me if I stuttered or some stuff in this video. It's been a while since I've recorded some videos, so we're still getting back into the swing of things. Thank you guys so much for watching. And for now, guys, this has been John Jr. signing off. But before that, did you know less than half of the people that watch my videos are subscribed, and you are one of them? It'd be awesome if you could go down below and hit that subscribe button to change that and help me get to my goal of 3,000 by the end of the year.